I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this. I've read the posts, heard the horror stories, husbands finding out their wives were unfaithful, but I always thought, not me. My marriage is solid. We're good. Turns out, I was wrong. The whole thing started on a Tuesday night. Funny how that detail sticks with me, but it does. Tuesdays are usually uneventful. Dinner, TV, bed. But that night, my wife, Claire, was acting off. She'd been glued to her phone more than usual, her face lit up by the screen like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. I tried not to think much of it. People scroll, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. But then, she laughed. Not just any laugh, though. It wasn't the half-hearted chuckle I'd been getting for years when I told a dad joke. It was a laugh full of life, almost flirtatious. "Who's that?" I asked casually, keeping my tone light. I didn't want to sound paranoid or controlling. We've been married for 15 years. There should be trust, right? "Just Megan," she replied, naming her coworker. Her fingers danced across the screen as she typed out a reply. "She sent me this meme. It's stupid. Maybe I should have let it go." But something about the way she said it didn't sit right. It was too quick, too rehearsed. Like she had an answer ready for a question I hadn't even fully formed yet. And the way her shoulders tightened when I asked? Yeah, that wasn't nothing. When she went to take a shower later, she left her phone on the couch. That was unusual too. She never let it out of her sight anymore. It was sitting there like it was daring me. I'll admit it, I looked. Call me an asshole or whatever. But if you've ever had that gut feeling, you know how hard it is to ignore. Her lock screen didn't give me much. Just a string of notifications. A couple texts from Megan, one from Target about a sale, and then, Ethan. I stared at the name. My stomach tightened. Ethan. That wasn't a name I'd seen pop up on her phone before. It definitely wasn't a coworker or one of her mom friends. The text preview read, "Can't stop thinking about last night." I froze. My brain couldn't even process it at first. Last night? Thinking about what? What the hell is this? Against my better judgment, I opened it. I swiped, and there it was, a whole thread of messages. Some were suggestive, others straight up explicit. Things like, "You looked amazing in that dress," and "I wish we could have had more time alone." It didn't take long to figure out who Ethan was. Her high school boyfriend? The one she told me about years ago. The one she said was just a dumb kid thing, and nothing serious. The one she swore she hadn't spoken to in decades. Turns out, they'd been speaking. A lot. I scrolled back as far as I could. Weeks, maybe months, until my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't hold the phone. The worst part wasn't even the words. It was the photos. There were pictures she'd sent him. Some were innocent enough, selfies in her car or at work. But then there were others. Ones that no married woman should be sending to another man. My heart was pounding out of my chest. It felt like the room was closing in on me. I don't know how long I sat there staring at her phone, but eventually, I heard the water shut off. I had about 30 seconds to decide what to do. Should I put the phone back? Act like I didn't see anything? Or confront her right then and there? I chose the latter. She came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, humming like she didn't have a care in the world. I was still sitting on the couch, her phone in my hand. She stopped when she saw me, her eyes darting between me and the screen. "Can we talk?" I said, my voice as steady as I could make it. Her face went pale. "What's going on?" I held up her phone. "You tell me." At first, she played dumb. "What do you mean? What are you doing with my phone?" I unlocked it and opened the messages with Ethan. I didn't say a word, just handed it to her. Her face went through about 3 different stages. Shock, panic, and then nothing. She went completely blank, like a switch had been flipped. "Okay," she said after a long pause. "I guess you know." That's it? I thought. That's all she had to say? No denial, no excuses, just, "I guess you know." I couldn't hold it in anymore. "How long?" My voice cracked, which pissed me off even more. I didn't want to sound weak, but I was breaking. "Does it matter?" she shot back. "You already went through my phone, so clearly, you've made up your mind about me. Don't turn this around on me, Claire. I'm not the one sneaking around with my ex-boyfriend." She rolled her eyes, like I was some annoying customer at Starbucks complaining about the wrong order. It's not what you think. I laughed. I actually laughed, even though I felt like crying. It's exactly what I think. You've been lying to me, lying to our kids. For what? For him? What the hell is wrong with you? She didn't answer. She just stood there, clutching her towel, staring at the floor like a kid caught cheating on a test. That's when it hit me. She wasn't sorry. Not for what she did, anyway. She was sorry she got caught. I think you should leave, I said finally. My voice was low, but firm. Go stay with your mom, or Megan, or whoever the hell you want. Just get out. She didn't argue. She just nodded, walked past me to the bedroom, and started packing a bag. No apology, no tears, no fight. That hurt more than anything she could have said. When she left, the house felt eerily quiet. I sat there for hours, replaying everything in my head, wondering how I could have been so blind. How long had she been checked out of our marriage? How long had I been the fool who didn't see it? The texts, the pictures, her laugh. It all kept looping in my mind, like a movie I couldn't turn off. And as much as I wanted to hate her, I mostly hated myself. For not seeing it sooner, for trusting her, for loving someone who could betray me so completely. By the time the sun came up, one thing was clear. My life as I knew it was over. They say hindsight is 20/20ths, but I swear, hindsight feels more like 20/200 when you're looking back at your own life. The week after Claire left was like a carousel of memories, spinning round and round until I thought I'd throw up. 15 years of marriage unraveled in a single night. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way it made me question everything. Did she love me when we got married? Was she happy when we bought our first home? What about when we had the kids? Was she ever truly present? Or was she always just biding her time until someone like Ethan came back into the picture? Every time I tried to convince myself she couldn't have faked it all, my mind came up with something that made me doubt. Like, why had she never seemed truly excited to do the little things with me? I used to brush it off as her being tired or stressed. But now? Now it just felt like a red flag I'd been too blind, or too stupid, to notice. The first couple of days after she moved out were unbearable. I barely slept. The bed felt too big without her in it, and every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was those damn messages. That stupid name, Ethan. It was like it was burned into my brain. Then there were the kids. God, talking to the kids was the hardest part. Sam is 16 and Jamie just turned 13. They're old enough to know something was wrong, but I didn't want to dump the whole truth on them. I mean, how do you even explain something like this? Hey, kids, Mom betrayed me and blew up our family. Dinner's at 6. Sam cornered me first. He's sharp, too sharp sometimes. Dad, why did Mom leave? He asked point blank, arms crossed like he was interrogating me. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to turn him against her. Your mom and I are going through some stuff right now, I said. It's complicated, but we both love you and Jamie. That's what matters. He wasn't buying it. Is it about another guy? My stomach dropped. Why would you think that? He shrugged, but his face said it all. I'm not dumb, Dad. Jamie was quieter about it. She just hugged me a lot, like she was trying to hold everything together with her tiny arms. Is Mom coming back? She whispered one night when we were watching TV. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth. I don't know, sweetheart, I said, even though I did know. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, emails, and awkward conversations with family and friends. Everyone wanted to know what happened, and I didn't know how to explain it without sounding like I'd been asleep at the wheel for 15 years. My sister, Lisa, was the first to call. She's always been protective of me, maybe too much sometimes. I knew something was off with her, she said as soon as I told her. Claire always seemed distant. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, half annoyed, half curious. What was I supposed to say? Hey, your wife doesn't seem that into you? You wouldn't have listened. She wasn't wrong. Then there was my buddy Mike. We've been friends since college, and he's the guy I go to when I need someone to keep it real. I told him everything over beers one night. How I found out, what she said, or didn't say, and how I couldn't stop replaying every moment of our marriage in my head. Dude, you've got to stop torturing yourself, he said, sipping his IPA. You're never gonna get the answers you want. Even if she sat down and told you everything, it wouldn't make sense. People do shitty things for shitty reasons. That's it. I nodded, but his words didn't sink in. Not yet, anyway. The worst part, though, was the pity. God, I hated the pity. The sideways glances from neighbors, the overly sympathetic texts from old friends I hadn't talked to in years. Everyone acted like I was some wounded animal they didn't know how to help. Let me know if you need anything, they'd say, which is code for, I feel bad for you, but I don't actually want to get involved. And Claire? She was a ghost. No calls, no texts, nothing. Just radio silence. The only updates I got were through our lawyer, who was already talking about splitting assets and child custody. Meanwhile, she was out there living her new life with Ethan, like the past 15 years meant nothing. One night, I found myself digging through old photo albums. I don't even know why. I think I just wanted to remind myself of the good times, to prove to myself that they existed. There we were on our wedding day, smiling like two idiots who thought they had the whole world figured out. There we were at the hospital, holding Sam for the first time. Her hair was a mess, her face was flushed, but her smile was real. I know it was. It had to be. So when did it all change? Was it gradual, like a slow leak in a tire, or did it happen all at once? Did she wake up one day and decide she didn't love me anymore, or had she never loved me the way I loved her? These were the questions that kept me up at night. The questions that no one, not Mike, not Lisa, not even Claire, could answer. By the end of the week, I felt like I was losing my mind. I needed to do something, anything, to take back control of my life. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her win. If she wanted to throw away 15 years, fine. But I wasn't going to let her rewrite history. I wasn't going to let her destroy my relationship with my kids or take more than her fair share in the divorce. For the first time since that Tuesday night, I felt a spark of clarity. I didn't know what the future looked like, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going down without a fight. You'd think finding out your wife cheated on you and blew up your life would be the worst part of the whole ordeal. Turns out, that was just the opening act. The real gut punch came a few days later, sitting across from my divorce lawyer in a cramped office that smelled like burnt coffee and stale frustration. Her name was Mary Whitaker. Late 40s, sharp as hell, no-nonsense type. When I walked into her office, she was clicking away on her laptop and barely looked up when she greeted me. "Take a seat, Mr. Collins." "Coffee?" "No, thanks," I said, sitting down. My hands were clenched into fists on my lap. I didn't realize it until she glanced at them and raised an eyebrow. "First divorce?" she asked, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. I nodded. "Hopefully the last." She didn't laugh. "Well, let's start with the basics. Tell me what happened." And so I told her. I spilled the whole ugly mess. The texts, the affair, the fact that Claire had already moved out and was likely shacked up with Ethan, her high school boyfriend. Mary listened without interrupting, her pen scratching notes on a legal pad. When I was done, she leaned back in her chair and let out a long sigh. "Well, Mr. Collins," she said, "I won't sugarcoat this. You're in for a rough ride." My stomach tightened. What does that mean? She pulled out a manila folder and started flipping through some paperwork. "It means you're dealing with a no-fault divorce state. Infidelity might feel like the smoking gun, but it's not going to matter as much as you think." "Wait, what?" I leaned forward in my chair. "She cheated on me. She's the one who destroyed our marriage. How does that not matter?" Mary adjusted her glasses and gave me a look that was equal parts pity and pragmatism. "It matters morally, Mr. Collins, but the law doesn't care about morals. In this state, it's no fault, which means the court won't take her infidelity into account when dividing assets or determining alimony." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "So you're telling me she cheats, leaves, and I still have to pay her?" "Potentially," she said, flipping another page. "Let's talk about your finances. How much do you make annually?" I told her my salary, around $120,000 a year. It wasn't millionaire money, but it was enough to keep us comfortable. Claire hadn't worked full-time in years, though she did some freelance graphic design here and there. Most of the household income came from me. Mary nodded, jotting down notes. "And Claire? What's her income?" "Maybe $15,000 a year tops," I said bitterly. She quit her full-time job when Sam was born and never really went back. Said she wanted to focus on the kids. Well, that decision is going to weigh heavily in her favor, Mary said matter-of-factly. I blinked. What are you talking about? She chose to quit. I didn't force her. Doesn't matter. The court will see her as a stay-at-home parent who sacrificed her career to raise your children. That makes her eligible for alimony. Alimony. The word hit me like a slap. You've got to be kidding me. She cheated. She's living with another guy. And now I have to pay her alimony? Mary sighed again, clearly used to this reaction. I understand how frustrating it is, but the court doesn't see it the way you do. They'll argue that her ability to re-enter the workforce is limited because of the years she spent out of it. They'll also consider your income disparity. The goal of alimony is to ensure she can maintain a similar standard of living to what she had during the marriage. I laughed bitterly. A similar standard of living? She's living with Ethan now. Let him pay for her standard of living. Mary gave me a look that said I needed to calm down. If they're cohabitating, that could work in your favor. We'll need to prove it, though. Photos, witnesses, anything that shows they're living together and sharing expenses. It's not a guarantee, but it might reduce your alimony obligation. This wasn't what I wanted to hear. I'd come into her office hoping for some kind of justice, some loophole that would let me walk away without being financially gutted. Instead, I felt like I was being handed a bill for someone else's screw-up. And what about the house? I asked, desperate to change the subject. It's in my name. I've been paying the mortgage for 15 years. Does she get half of that too? Mary hesitated. If the house was purchased during the marriage, it's considered marital property, even if it's in your name. That means it's subject to division. Unbelievable, I muttered, running a hand through my hair. Mr. Collins, she said firmly, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but my job is to prepare you for reality, not give you false hope. The sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be. I stared at her, trying to keep my temper in check. So what's the point? If she gets the house, alimony, and everything else, what do I even have left? You have your kids, Mary said, her tone softening. And if you want to fight for custody, we need to focus on that. What's your current arrangement with the children? They're staying with me right now, I said. Claire left, and I didn't exactly invite her to take them with her. Mary nodded. That's good. Stability is key in custody cases. Keep a detailed record of your time with the kids, meals, school drop-offs, activities, everything. The more involved you are, the stronger your case. Custody, alimony, dividing assets. It was all too much. By the time I left her office, my head was spinning. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the dashboard, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. Claire had already taken so much from me. My trust, my love, my sense of security. And now, thanks to the law, she was going to take even more. It didn't seem fair. It didn't seem right. But Mary was clear. This wasn't about fairness. This was about survival. As I drove home, a single thought kept running through my mind. I can't let her take everything. If you ever want to test the limits of your patience and sanity, try co-parenting with someone who ripped your heart out and stomped on it for good measure. That's where I'm at right now, trying to navigate this minefield with Claire while keeping it together for the kids. Some days, I feel like I deserve a medal just for not losing my shit. Let me start by saying this. I love my kids more than anything. Sam and Jamie are the only reason I'm not drowning in a bottle of Jack Daniels every night. They're my anchor, the thing that keeps me from completely falling apart. But trying to co-parent with Claire? That's a whole different level of hell. The first big issue came when we had to figure out a schedule. Claire called me up, all business, like we were negotiating a business deal instead of splitting time with the two human beings we brought into this world together. I think the kids should stay with me during the week, she said. Her tone as cool and detached as if she were ordering coffee. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Why? So you can parade Ethan around like some kind of replacement dad? Her voice immediately turned icy. This isn't about him. It's about what's best for Sam and Jamie. And you think that's you? I shot back. You left, Claire. You walked out on this family. Why should you get them during the week? They need stability, she said, like she was reading it off a script her lawyer gave her. They have stability, With me, I snapped. I'm the one who's been here, taking care of them, making sure they're okay while you're off playing house with your boyfriend. That's when she played her favorite card, the victim card. I can't believe how hostile you're being, she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. I'm trying to do what's right for the kids, and all you can do is attack me. It took everything I had not to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "We're splitting custody 50-50, Claire. End of discussion." She didn't like it, but she didn't fight me too hard, either. I think she knew she didn't have a leg to stand on. So, for now, we've got the kids alternating weeks between us. It's not perfect, but it's the best I could manage without dragging them into court. The real fun started when we had to coordinate schedules. Who's picking up Sam from soccer practice? Who's taking Jamie to her orthodontist appointment? These are simple things, right? Wrong. Every conversation with Claire turns into a power struggle. Can you take Jamie to her appointment on Thursday? I texted her last week. Her reply, can't. I have plans. I knew exactly what plans meant. Plans with Ethan. Plans that were apparently more important than her own daughter's health. You can't cancel? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Her response came quickly. Why don't you take her? You've been acting like super dad lately anyway. I stared at my phone, my blood boiling. How do you even respond to something like that? I ended up just texting back, fine, and taking Jamie myself. But the worst part isn't the scheduling conflicts or the passive-aggressive texts. It's the way Claire tries to manipulate the kids. She's subtle about it. At least, she thinks she is, but I see right through her. For example, last weekend, Jamie came back from Claire's house with a new outfit. Nothing unusual there. Claire's always loved shopping. But this outfit was something else. Tight jeans, a crop top, and boots with heels. She's 13. What's this? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Mom bought it for me, Jamie said, smiling like she'd just won the lottery. Don't you think it's a little much? I asked, choosing my words carefully. Jamie's smile disappeared. Mom said you'd say that. Of course, she did. Or take Sam, who's been more withdrawn lately. He used to talk to me about everything. School, friends, girls. Now, he barely says 2 words. When I finally got him to open up, he admitted that Claire's been dropping little comments, like, I bet your dad's too busy to help you with that. Or, your dad always did care more about work than family. I was furious. What kind of parent does that? I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I knew it wouldn't solve anything. Claire has a way of twisting things to make herself look like the victim, and I didn't want to give her more ammunition. Instead, I focused on the kids. I reassured Sam that I'm here for him, no matter what. I told Jamie that she doesn't need to dress a certain way to be cool or accepted. I'm trying to be the steady one, the parent they can count on. But it's hard when the person you're co-parenting with seems determined to undermine you at every turn. The only saving grace in all of this is that the kids aren't stupid. They see things. They notice who shows up and who doesn't, who keeps their promises and who flakes out. I just have to hope that, in the long run, they'll see the truth. In the meantime, I'm doing my best to keep the peace. I bite my tongue when Claire makes snide remarks. I put up with her bullshit excuses and her constant need to play the martyr. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about me or her. It's about Sam and Jamie. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't eat at me. There are nights when I lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell this became my life. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to co-parent with someone who betrayed me, someone who put her own selfish desires above our family. And yet, here I am, doing the best I can with the hand I've been dealt. Sometimes, I wonder if Claire ever feels even a fraction of the guilt or regret she should. Does she ever think about the damage she's done? Or is she too busy playing house with Ethan to care? I guess I'll never know. But one thing's for sure. I'm not giving up. Not on my kids, and not on myself. Claire might have broken our family, but she's not going to break me. It's co-parenting, not co-war. And I'm going to make damn sure it stays that way, even if it kills me. If you had told me a year ago that I'd have to sit in a room with the guy my wife cheated on me with, I would have laughed in your face. Or maybe punched you. But here I am, living the nightmare. Ethan, her boyfriend, my rival, the man who tore my life apart. is now a recurring character in my kids' lives. And by extension, mine. It started small. Claire was careful at first, probably testing the waters. She'd casually mention, "Oh, Ethan helped Jamie with her math homework," or "Ethan took Sam to the batting cages." Like it was no big deal. Like I was supposed to just nod and smile while some other guy played dad to my kids. The first time I actually met him, though, that was a whole other level of awkward. Claire and I had to sit down with Sam's school counselor about his grades slipping. Surprise, surprise. Turns out divorce isn't great for kids. I walked into the room, expecting it to be just the three of us, and there he was. Ethan. He stood up when I walked in, this big, confident grin plastered across his face. He's tall, of course. Athletic build, scruffy beard. Basically, he looks like the kind of guy who spends his weekends chopping wood in flannel shirts. I'm no slouch, but next to him, I suddenly felt like the generic dad stereotype. Khakis, button down, tired eyes. "You must be Chris," he said, extending a hand like we were old buddies. I stared at his hand for a beat too long before shaking it. "Yeah, and you're Ethan." My voice was flat, controlled. I wasn't about to make a scene in front of the school counselor, but inside, I was ready to put my fist through a wall. Claire, of course, acted like it was all perfectly normal. "Ethan's been helping Sam with his essays," she said, like I should be grateful. "Oh, really?" I said, turning to Ethan. "Didn't realize you were a tutor." He shrugged, still smiling. "Just trying to help where I can. Help where I can." Like he's some kind of hero. It took every ounce of self-control not to say, "Help where you can? How about helping yourself to someone else's wife, asshole?" The meeting was a blur. I was too focused on not losing my temper to pay much attention to what the counselor was saying. Something about structure, communication, making sure Sam felt supported. All I could think about was how Ethan was sitting there, like he had any right to be involved in decisions about my son. After the meeting, Ethan tried to make small talk. "Sam's a great kid," he said as we walked out to the parking lot. "Yeah," I said, keeping my eyes straight ahead. "He is." Claire chimed in, her voice overly cheerful. "Ethan's been a big help lately. The kids really like him." I stopped walking and turned to her. "That's great, Claire. But let's not forget who their father is." She had the decency to look uncomfortable, but Ethan? He just stood there, hands in his pockets, that stupid grin still on his face. The thing is, I know I'm supposed to be the bigger person. I know I'm not supposed to let this guy get under my skin. But how do you not? How do you sit there and watch some other man step into your life, your role, and not feel like everything inside you is screaming? It's not just about Claire either. Sure, there's a part of me that's still angry, furious, at her for what she did. But this is about my kids. Sam and Jamie are my world, and the idea of them looking up to Ethan, bonding with him, maybe even calling him dad someday, it's unbearable. Jamie seems to like him. She came back from Claire's house last weekend and wouldn't stop talking about how Ethan taught her how to make pancakes. "He flips them in the air, Dad. It's so cool," she said, her eyes lighting up. "That's great, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. But inside, I was boiling. Pancakes. The guy was winning over my daughter with pancakes. Sam, at least, is a little more reserved. He's polite but distant when it comes to Ethan. I think he senses how much it bothers me, even though I try to hide it. Last week, I caught him texting while we were watching a game, and I asked who he was talking to. "Mom," he said. "She wants to know if Ethan can come to my game on Friday." I froze. "What did you tell her?" "I said I don't care," he shrugged. "But I cared." "Oh, I cared a lot." The idea of Ethan sitting in the stands, cheering for my son like he had any claim to that pride, made me want to punch something. But what could I do? Ban him from the game? That would just make me look like the bad guy. So I showed up on Friday, determined to focus on Sam and ignore Ethan. And for the most part, I did. I sat with my parents, cheered like a maniac when Sam hit a double, and avoided making eye contact with Claire and Ethan, who were sitting a few rows down. After the game, though, Ethan came up to congratulate Sam. He clapped him on the shoulder, called him champ, and even offered to take him out for ice cream. That's when I lost it. "I'll take my son out for ice cream," I said sharply. Ethan held up his hands, like I was some kind of wild animal he needed to calm down. Hey, no problem. Just trying to help. Help. There was that word again. Chris, Claire said, her voice low in warning. But I didn't care. I turned to Sam and said, let's go. Your grandparents are waiting. The drive home was quiet. Sam stared out the window, and I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. When we finally got home, he turned to me and said, you don't have to be mad at Ethan, you know? I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. I'm not mad at him, I lied. I don't want you to feel like you have to choose between us. I'm not choosing, he said simply. I know who my dad is. That hit me like a punch to the gut, but in a good way. For the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't losing everything. Ethan might be in the picture now, but he'll never be their father. That's my role, my responsibility, my privilege. And as long as I keep showing up, keep being there for Sam and Jamie, no one can take that away from me. Not even him. If you think divorce is hard, try watching it unfold through your kids' eyes. Nothing prepares you for the way it tears at them, leaving scars you can't see but feel in every heavy silence, every forced smile, every late-night question they're too scared to ask outright. I'd always heard that divorce messes up kids, but I told myself I'd be the exception. We'd keep it civil. We'd focus on what's best for them. But Claire and I couldn't even get through a phone call without arguing. How the hell were we supposed to protect Sam and Jamie from all this? The first sign that the split was really hitting them came from Jamie. She's my baby girl, 13 going on 30, with her mom's stubbornness and my terrible sense of humor. Normally, she's full of energy, always talking about her friends, her latest school project, or whatever TikTok trend is blowing up. But lately, she's been quiet. Too quiet. It started one night when we were having dinner. I'd made spaghetti, one of the few meals I can cook without setting off the smoke alarm, and we were sitting at the table. Jamie was pushing noodles around her plate, not eating. Everything okay, kiddo? I asked. She shrugged. I'm not that hungry. That's a first, Sam said, smirking. Jamie shot him a look, then turned to me. Do we have to go to Mom's this weekend? I froze. We'd agreed to a 50-50 custody split, alternating weeks. This was Claire's weekend, and Jamie hadn't complained about it before. Why don't you want to go? I asked gently. I just don't, she mumbled, staring at her plate. Is something wrong? She hesitated, then said, no, it's fine. But it wasn't fine. I could tell. Later that night, I knocked on her door. She was lying on her bed, scrolling on her phone. When I sat down next to her, she sighed, like she knew what was coming. Talk to me, I said. She didn't look at me. I don't like it there. Why not? She shrugged again, her go-to move when she didn't want to talk. It's just different. I waited, letting the silence stretch. Finally, she said, I don't like Ethan. He's always there, and it's weird. There it was. The thing I'd been dreading. What's weird about it? I asked, careful to keep my voice calm. He acts like he's part of the family, she said, her voice cracking. Like he's trying to be our dad or something. But he's not. And Mom, she doesn't even care. She just lets him do whatever. My chest tightened. Did he say something to you? Do something? No, she said quickly. It's not like that. He's just always there. And I don't want him to be. I wanted to tell her I understood. I wanted to tell her I felt the same way every time I thought about Ethan being in their lives. But I couldn't. Not without making things worse. Have you told your mom how you feel? I asked. She shook her head. What's the point? She wouldn't care. Hearing that broke my heart. No kid should ever feel like their voice doesn't matter, especially not with their own parent. I'll talk to her, I said. Jamie sat up, alarmed. No, don't. It'll just make her mad, and then she'll say it's my fault. Your mom wouldn't say that, I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure I believed them. Can't we just stay here? She whispered. I didn't know what to say. Legally, I couldn't keep them from Claire, and even if I could, I didn't want to put them in the position of choosing between us. That's not their job. Sam, on the other hand, was harder to read. At 16, He's mastered the art of keeping his emotions buried deep under a layer of sarcasm and teenage indifference. But even he couldn't hide the cracks. One night, while Jamie was at a friend's house, Sam and I were watching a game. Out of nowhere, he said, "Do you think Mom regrets it?" I paused, unsure how to respond. Regrets what? He gave me a look. You know, everything. I took a deep breath. I don't know, Sam. That's something you'd have to ask her. He snorted. Yeah, right. Like she'd tell me the truth. I wanted to defend her, to say something, anything, that would make him feel better. But I couldn't. Because deep down, I wasn't sure she would tell him the truth. It's not your job to figure that out, I said finally. Whatever's going on between me and your mom, it's not your fault. None of this is your fault. I know, he said, but his voice was quiet, uncertain. A few days later, Claire called me. Jamie's been quiet all weekend, she said, her tone accusatory. Did something happen while she was with you? She doesn't like Ethan being around so much, I said, keeping my tone even. Claire sighed, the kind of sigh that made it clear she thought I was overreacting. He's part of my life now. They need to get used to it. Maybe, I said, but that doesn't mean you should ignore how they feel. I'm not ignoring them, she snapped. I'm just trying to move on, Chris. We both have to. This isn't about you moving on, I said, my patience wearing thin. It's about the kids. And right now, they're stuck in the middle of all this. Well, maybe if you weren't so hostile, they wouldn't feel like they had to choose sides, she shot back. I ended the call before I said something I'd regret. The thing is, she's not entirely wrong. I've tried to shield Sam and Jamie from my anger, but it's hard. Some days, it spills over despite my best efforts. And they're smart enough to pick up on it, no matter how much I try to hide it. I don't know what the future holds for them. I don't know if they'll come out of this unscathed, or if they'll carry the weight of it for the rest of their lives. All I can do is keep showing up, keep listening, and keep reminding them that they're loved. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that being stuck in the middle doesn't mean you have to feel alone. And I'll be damned if I let them feel that way. If you think catching your wife cheating is bad, wait until you see what happens when lawyers get involved. I always thought divorce was about splitting up and moving on. You know, like grown-ups. Turns out, it's more like a no-holds-barred cage match where your wallet is the punching bag. From the moment I filed for divorce, my bank account became enemy number one. First, there was the lawyer. Mary's good, don't get me wrong, but she doesn't come cheap. Every time I see an email or a missed call from her office, I feel a twinge of pain in my chest, like my credit card's trying to strangle me from the inside out. Then came the alimony talks. Let me tell you something. There's no faster way to feel completely powerless than to hear someone explain why you're legally obligated to pay your cheating ex money every month. We'll argue for a limited-term alimony agreement, Mary said, looking at me over her glasses during our latest meeting. But given her income disparity and the length of your marriage, I'd prepare for a substantial obligation. Substantial? I asked, my voice rising. She's living with Ethan. Shouldn't he be paying for her? Mary gave me that look she does, the one that says she's heard every variation of this argument before. Unless we can prove they're cohabitating in a way that directly benefits her financially, it won't make a difference. And even if we can, the court will still prioritize maintaining her standard of living. Standard of living. Those words have haunted me ever since. How is it my responsibility to maintain her standard of living when she destroyed the life we built together? And then there's the house. Ah, the house. Our beautiful, 4-bedroom suburban dream with the backyard where Sam and Jamie learned to play catch. The kitchen where we spent countless mornings making pancakes. The living room where I watched it all fall apart. The house is technically in both our names, but I've been the one paying the mortgage since day one. You'd think that would count for something. Spoiler, it doesn't. It's considered marital property, Mary explained, her tone almost apologetic. She's entitled to half its value. Half its value. Half of the home I worked my ass off to afford. Half of the memories I thought we'd share forever. She doesn't even want the house, I argued. She's already moved in with Ethan. She doesn't have to want it to claim her share, Mary said. And if you want to keep it, you'll likely need to buy out her equity. It felt like a punch to the gut. The idea of giving Claire a dime for something she'd abandoned was enough to make my blood boil. But selling the house? Losing the one place that still felt like home? That wasn't an option. So now I'm scraping together everything I can to try and keep it. Savings, 401k, anything that might help me come up with the buyout. Meanwhile, Claire's acting like this is all just a business transaction. I don't see why you're so attached to the house, she said during one of our discussions about the settlement. It's just a building. I stared at her, dumbfounded. It's not just a building, Claire. It's where we raised our kids. It's our life. Or at least it was. She shrugged, like none of it mattered. You're being sentimental. It's not healthy. Not healthy. This, coming from the woman who turned our lives into a soap opera starring Ethan the homewrecker. Then there's the child support. This one's the kicker because, even though we're splitting custody 50-50, Claire's lawyer is pushing for me to pay. She doesn't make enough to cover her share of their expenses, Mary explained during yet another soul-crushing meeting. Because she quit her job, I said through gritted teeth. Be that as it may, the court will base child support calculations on your incomes, not her career choices. I wanted to scream. So let me get this straight. I work hard to provide for my family. She cheats, and now I have to pay her to keep living her new life? Mary didn't respond. She didn't have to. The system is what it is, and no amount of yelling was going to change that. So here I am, trying to figure out how to juggle alimony, child support, and the mortgage, all while making sure Sam and Jamie don't feel the weight of any of this. I don't want them to worry about money. I don't want them to feel like they have to choose sides. But every time I write a check with Claire's name on it, I feel like I'm betraying myself. The kids don't know the details, of course. They know we're getting divorced, and they know things are tight. But they don't know about the financial circus happening behind the scenes. Sam asked me last week why I haven't fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen. You've been saying you'll get to it for months, Dad, he said, his tone half joking. I wanted to tell him the truth, that every spare penny I have is going toward fighting for this house, for him and Jamie. But instead, I just said, I'll get to it soon, buddy. Jamie's been asking for a new pair of sneakers. The ones she wants aren't expensive, but right now, every dollar counts. Maybe for your birthday, I told her, hating myself for not being able to say yes. Meanwhile, Claire's been posting pictures of her and Ethan on Instagram. Fancy dinners, weekend trips, smiling like she doesn't have a care in the world. I try not to look, but sometimes it feels like I can't help it. Like I need to remind myself who I'm dealing with. A few nights ago, I sat down with a bottle of whiskey and a calculator, trying to make the numbers work. No matter how I sliced it, it felt impossible. The weight of it all pressed down on me until I thought I might collapse. But then I heard Jamie laughing upstairs, probably at some dumb TikTok, and Sam yelling at his Xbox. And I remembered why I'm doing this. Why I can't give up, no matter how much it hurts. This fight isn't about Claire or Ethan, or even the house. It's about them. My kids. My family. So I'll keep pushing. I'll keep fighting. Because they're worth it, even if it kills me. It was late when the call came, just after midnight. I'd been sitting on the couch, half watching some documentary about deep-sea sharks, trying to get my mind off the endless carousel of bills, custody schedules, and Claire's Instagram updates with Ethan. The kids were asleep upstairs, and the house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, and for a second, I thought about ignoring it. Nothing good comes from late-night calls. But then I saw her name on the screen, Claire. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. She never called this late. We usually kept our communication strictly about the kids. Texts, emails, maybe a quick phone call during normal hours. What the hell could she want at midnight? Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? There was a pause, just long enough to make me wonder if she'd pocket-dialed me. Then I heard her voice, soft and unsteady. Chris? Are you awake? I am now, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. What's going on? She let out a shaky breath, and for a moment, I thought she might start crying. That would have been a first. Claire's always been the composed one, the one who keeps her emotions under lock and key. I don't know why I called, she said finally. I couldn't sleep. I leaned back on the couch, wary. Okay, so what's on your mind? Another pause. I could hear her breathing, could almost picture her sitting on the edge of her bed, twisting the hem of her shirt like she always did when she was anxious. "Do you hate me?" she asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. I sat up, my heart racing. "What? Do you hate me?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know how to answer. Did I hate her? There were moments, plenty of them, when I thought I did. When I replayed the betrayal in my mind, when I saw her smiling in photos with Ethan, when I wrote those checks for alimony and child support. But hate? Hate felt too simple, too clean. What I felt was messier than that. "I don't know," I said honestly. She let out a bitter laugh. "That's fair, I guess. Why are you asking me this?" I asked, still trying to figure out what was happening. "Because," she said, her voice breaking, "I don't think I've stopped hating myself since it happened." I froze. In all the months since she'd left, Claire had never shown an ounce of regret. If anything, she'd seemed perfectly content with her new life, her new relationship, her new reality. But now, there was something in her voice I hadn't heard before: vulnerability. "Why would you hate yourself?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "You made your choices, Claire. You didn't have to do what you did." "I know," she said quickly. "God, Chris, I know. And that's the worst part. I can't even blame anyone but myself." I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure I could trust what I was hearing. "I thought I was unhappy," she continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. I don't know, I thought I needed something more, something different. And then Ethan came back into my life, and it felt exciting, like I was 20 again, and the world was full of possibilities. But now what? I asked, my voice cold. "Now it feels empty," she admitted. "Like I traded something real for something temporary." For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell her she deserved to feel empty after everything she'd done. But another part of me, the part that had loved her for 15 years, felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. "What about Ethan?" I asked, trying to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "I thought he was your soulmate, or whatever." She laughed again, a hollow sound. "He's not. He never was. I think I just wanted him to be." "So what are you saying?" She hesitated. "I don't know. I guess. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. For the way I hurt you. For the way I messed up our family. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it." Her words hung in the air, heavy and raw. For months, I'd been waiting for something like this, a sign that she felt even a fraction of the pain she'd caused. But now that it was here, I didn't know what to do with it. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I've been thinking about us," she said. "About what we had. And I can't stop wondering if I made the biggest mistake of my life." I closed my eyes, her words cutting through me like a blade. Part of me wanted to tell her she had made a mistake, that she'd destroyed something good for no reason. But another part of me, the part that had been trying so hard to move on, didn't want to give her that power. "Chris," she said after a long silence. "I don't know what you want me to say, Claire," I said finally. "I can't just forget what happened. And I can't keep going back to it either. I've got the kids to think about. I've got myself to think about." "I understand," she said softly. I needed to tell you." "Well, you told me," I said, my voice harsher than I intended. "What happens next is up to you." There was another long pause, and then she said, "Good night, Chris." "Good night," I said, ending the call. I sat there for a long time after, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was she being genuine? Or was this just another way to ease her guilt? I didn't know. And honestly, I wasn't sure it mattered. What mattered now was me, Sam, and Jamie. The three of us, moving forward, building a new life out of the wreckage she'd left behind. Forgiveness might come someday, but tonight wasn't that night. If someone told me I'd be back on the dating scene at 45, I would have laughed in their face. Me? Dating? At this age? After 15 years of marriage and 2 kids? No way. Yet there I was, sitting in my car outside a trendy wine bar, sweating through my shirt and trying to remember how to talk to a woman who wasn't my ex-wife or a PDA mom. Her name was Heather. We met on one of those dating apps. My buddy Mike practically forced me to set up a profile after one too many beers one night. Dude, you've got to put yourself out there, he'd said. You can't spend the rest of your life stewing over Claire. I wasn't sure about it, but he helped me set it up, choosing photos where I didn't look completely dead inside and writing a bio that made me sound like someone worth swiping right on. Divorced dad of two. Loves baseball, grilling, and bad dad jokes. Short, simple, and to the point. To my surprise, Heather messaged me first. She was a teacher, divorced for a couple of years, no kids. Her profile said she loved hiking, cooking, and live music. She seemed nice, normal. We texted back and forth for a couple of weeks, and when she suggested meeting up, I figured, why not? But now that I was sitting in the parking lot, nerves were hitting me hard. I hadn't been on a first date since Bill Clinton was president. Back then, dating was dinner and a movie, not swiping and texting. And back then, I wasn't carrying around a suitcase full of emotional baggage. I checked the time. 6:58 p.m. Our reservation was for 7. I took a deep breath, wiped my palms on my jeans, and headed inside. Heather was already there, sitting at a small table near the window. She was prettier in person. Short blonde hair, kind eyes, a warm smile. When she saw me, she stood up and gave me a quick hug, which immediately caught me off guard. "Hi, Chris," she said. "It's so nice to finally meet you." "Yeah, you too," I managed, feeling like a nervous teenager. We sat down, and the first 10 minutes were awkward. The waiter came over, and I fumbled with the wine list, ordering something mid-range because I didn't want to seem cheap or too flashy. She ordered a salad, and I went with the burger because, well, I needed comfort food. "So," she said, smiling, "how's your week been?" "Good," I said automatically. Then, realizing that was boring, I added, "Busy with work and the kids, you know? Never a dull moment." She nodded. "I get that. My students keep me on my toes, and I don't even have to take them home at the end of the day." I laughed, a little too loudly. "Yeah, kids are great. Exhausting, but great." There was a pause, and I felt the silence stretch between us like a chasm. Should I ask about her job? Her divorce? Is that too personal? Too soon? "So," I said, trying to fill the void, "how long have you been teaching?" She smiled and launched into a story about how she ended up in education. For the next 20 minutes, I nodded, asked questions, and tried to seem engaged. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't stop second-guessing everything. Was I coming across as interested or desperate? Was this even going well? At one point, I accidentally knocked over my water glass. It didn't spill much, but it was enough to make me feel like an idiot. Heather laughed it off, but I could feel my face burning. By the time our food came, I was feeling a little more relaxed. Heather was easy to talk to, and she had a quick wit that caught me off guard in the best way. When she teased me about my choice of a burger at a wine bar, I teased her right back about her rabbit food salad. "So," she said, halfway through the meal, "how long have you been divorced?" The question hung in the air. I knew it was coming, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. "Technically, it's not finalized yet," I admitted. "It's been a process." She nodded, her expression sympathetic. "I get it. Mine took almost a year to finalize. It's never easy." "No, it's not," I said, staring down at my plate. She hesitated, then asked, "Do you mind if I ask what happened?" I took a deep breath. "She cheated," I said simply, "with her high school boyfriend. They're together now." Heather's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't look shocked, more like she understood. "I'm sorry," she said. "That must have been really hard." "It was," I said. "It still is, some days. But I'm trying to move forward. For my kids, mostly." She nodded again, and for the first time all night, I felt like I could breathe. We talked more after that, about her marriage, her ex-husband, the challenges of starting over. She told me about how she'd spent months feeling like a failure before realizing she was better off without him. By the time the check came, I realized I was having fun. Real fun. Not the forced kind where you're just trying to get through the night. "Thanks for dinner," she said as we stood up to leave. "Thanks for coming," I said. We walked out to the parking lot together, and for a moment, I wasn't sure what to do. Shake her hand? Go for a hug? A kiss? Before I could decide, She leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. "Let me know if you want to do this again," she said, smiling. I stood there for a moment, watching her walk to her car. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. Dating after divorce is terrifying. It's awkward, messy, and full of self-doubt. But maybe, just maybe, it's also a chance to start over. And after everything I've been through, that's a chance I'm willing to take. If you've never been to family court, let me paint you a picture. It's the most sterile, soul-sucking place you can imagine, where lives are ripped apart under fluorescent lights and nothing ever smells quite right. It's like a DMV for broken families. I sat at one of the long tables, my lawyer Mary on one side of me, and a folder full of documents on the other. Across the room was Claire, looking polished and unbothered in a navy blazer that screamed, "I'm doing great without you." Beside her sat her lawyer, a smug guy named Dennis who probably modeled his personality after a villain from a courtroom drama. It was the day I'd been dreading, the final divorce hearing. Months of arguments, paperwork, and sleepless nights all boiled down to this. The stakes? Custody, alimony, child support, and whether or not I got to keep the house. The judge, a stern-looking woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, called the proceedings to order. "This is case number 3417, she began, her voice echoing in the quiet courtroom. "Collins versus Collins. Let's proceed." Dennis started things off with his usual charm offensive, painting Claire as the picture-perfect mother and me as the overly aggressive ex-husband who just couldn't let go. "Your Honor," he said, gesturing to Claire like she was a saint, "my client has been the primary emotional caregiver for the children since their birth. She's devoted her life to their well-being, often at the expense of her own career." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Yes, Claire stayed home more while I worked, but that wasn't the whole story. I worked long hours so she could choose to stay home. I wasn't some absentee dad. I was the one who read bedtime stories, coached Sam's little league team, and made pancakes on Saturday mornings. Mary, thankfully, jumped in. While the respondent did spend more time at home during the children's early years, Mr. Collins has been the primary provider and has played an equally significant role in their lives. Since the separation, he's ensured stability for the children, keeping them in their school and extracurricular activities, and maintaining their daily routines. Dennis smirked. "And yet, your client has expressed hostility toward Ms. Collins' partner, Ethan, creating tension in the co-parenting relationship." There it was. The Ethan card. Mary didn't miss a beat. Mr. Collins' concerns about Ethan's involvement stem from his desire to ensure his children's well-being. Introducing a new partner so quickly after a separation can be destabilizing for children, which is exactly what we've seen here. Dennis shrugged, like he couldn't care less. The children have adjusted well to Ethan's presence, according to Ms. Collins. This supposed destabilization is simply Mr. Collins' personal bias. That's when I lost it. I leaned toward the microphone in front of me. Bias? Are you kidding me? I'm not biased. I'm their father. I've seen how this has affected them. Jamie won't even stay overnight at their house without a fight. "Mr. Collins," the judge said, her voice cutting through the tension, "please let your attorney speak for you." I sat back, fuming, while Mary whispered, "Stay calm. Losing your temper helps no one." The next few hours were a blur of back-and-forth arguments. Dennis brought up the alimony, arguing that Claire deserved enough to maintain the standard of living she'd grown accustomed to. Mary countered by pointing out that Claire was now cohabitating with Ethan, which should reduce her need for support. "We have evidence of cohabitation, including shared expenses and overlapping addresses," Mary said, sliding a folder across the table to the judge. Dennis, clearly annoyed, tried to downplay it. "Sharing expenses doesn't negate Ms. Collins' financial needs, especially when raising two children." "She's not raising them alone," Mary shot back. "Mr. Collins is an equal parent and should not be penalized for his financial success." The custody battle was next. Dennis tried to push the narrative that the kids would be better off primarily with Claire, citing her closer emotional bond. Mary wasn't having it. Both children have expressed a strong desire to maintain an equal relationship with their father. They've thrived under the current arrangement and deserve stability, not unnecessary changes. It was like watching two gladiators go at it, each trying to land the killing blow. Meanwhile, I sat there, gripping the edge of the table, trying not to scream. Then came the bombshell. "Your Honor," Dennis said, his tone suddenly smug. "We have a signed affidavit from one of Mr. Collins' neighbors, alleging that he has made derogatory remarks about Ms. Collins in front of the children." My stomach dropped. What the hell was this? The judge raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Whitaker?" Mary didn't flinch. "We've reviewed the affidavit, Your Honor." The neighbor, a close friend of Ms. Collins, provided no specific dates or corroborating evidence. "It's hearsay and should be treated as such." "Mr. Collins," the judge said, turning to me, "have you made negative comments about Ms. Collins in front of your children?" I took a deep breath. "No, Your Honor. I've done everything I can to shield them from this." Claire wouldn't look at me. I couldn't tell if she felt guilty or just didn't care. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge called a recess. When we reconvened, she delivered her decision. Custody will remain joint, with a 50-50 split. Regarding the marital home, Mr. Collins will retain ownership, provided he buys out Ms. Collins' equity within 60 days. Alimony will be limited to a 3-year term, reduced due to Ms. Collins' cohabitation with another partner. Child support will be calculated based on the shared custody arrangement and both parties' incomes. It wasn't a perfect win, but it was close enough. I got to keep the house. I got to keep my time with the kids. And I didn't feel completely gutted financially. As we left the courtroom, Claire caught my eye. For a moment, I thought she might say something, maybe apologize, maybe try to make peace. But she just looked away and walked out with Dennis. I stood there for a moment, letting it all sink in. The fight was over, but the war scars would take a long time to heal. Still, as I walked out of the courthouse and into the sunlight, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: relief. For the first time, I could see a path forward, and it didn't include looking back. It's been 6 months since the judge handed down her decision, and life has settled into something I can only describe as a new normal. It's not the life I thought I'd have at 45, but it's mine, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe again. The first few weeks after the court hearing were a whirlwind. I had 60 days to pull together the money to buy out Claire's share of the house, which meant dipping into my savings and liquidating a few investments. It wasn't easy, but keeping the house was worth every penny. It's not just a building, it's home. It's where Sam and Jamie have grown up, where their rooms are filled with posters and trophies, where the creaky floorboard in the hallway still makes them laugh when they try to sneak around late at night. Keeping the house gave us stability, and that's exactly what we needed after everything we'd been through. Co-parenting hasn't magically become easy, but the battles with Claire have mostly calmed down. We're civil now, or at least as civil as two people can be when there's still a mountain of unresolved tension between them. She still has Ethan in her life, and I've accepted that he's going to be around the kids. I don't like it, but I've learned to let go of the things I can't control. Sam and Jamie seem to be doing okay. Better than okay. Actually, Jamie's back to her bubbly self, filling the house with chatter about her friends and her latest obsession with painting. She's covered half her bedroom walls in these abstract designs that she swears are masterpieces. I don't get it, but I love seeing her happy again. Sam's been spending more time with me, too. We've started a new tradition of hitting the batting cages every Sunday. It's our time to talk, or not talk. Sometimes he just wants to focus on the pitches, and that's fine by me. Other times, he opens up in a way that reminds me he's still just a kid figuring things out. Last weekend, he told me he was thinking about asking a girl to the school dance. I gave him the best advice I could. Be polite, be confident, and don't wear too much cologne. He rolled his eyes but smiled, and for a moment, I saw the little boy who used to cling to my leg at soccer games. As for me, I'm still figuring things out. Dating has been interesting. I've been on a couple more dates with Heather, and while it's nice to feel wanted again, I'm not rushing into anything. She's patient, which I appreciate, and she understands that my kids come first. Being single after all these years is both freeing and terrifying. There are nights when I sit on the couch, staring at the TV, and wonder if I'll ever fully trust someone again. But then there are moments when I catch myself smiling for no reason, like when I'm grilling burgers on the back porch or watching Jamie's latest painting come to life. And I realize that happiness doesn't have to look the way I thought it would. I've also started taking better care of myself. I joined a gym, not because I'm trying to relive my glory days, but because I want to feel strong again. I'm eating better, drinking less, and even picked up a new hobby, woodworking. It sounds cliché, I know, but there's something incredibly satisfying about building something with your own two hands. My first project was a birdhouse for Jamie's art teacher. She says it's rustic, which I think is code for ugly, but I'll take it. Every now and then, Claire crosses my mind. It's hard not to think about her when you've spent nearly half your life with someone. I wonder if she's happy, if she ever thinks about what she threw away. Sometimes I catch myself wanting to reach out, to ask her why, but I know better. Those answers don't matter anymore. The truth is, I don't hate her. I don't love her either. What I feel for her now is something in between. Acceptance, maybe. She's the mother of my kids, and she'll always be a part of my story, but she doesn't define it anymore. The other day, Sam asked me if I ever thought about moving. Why would I do that? I asked him. He shrugged. I don't know. Maybe you'd want a fresh start. I thought about it for a moment. This is my fresh start, I said. And it is. The house, the kids, my new routines. They're all pieces of the life I'm rebuilding. It's not perfect, and it's not always easy, but it's mine. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll end up with Heather. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll stay in this house until the kids are grown. Or maybe I'll pack up and move to a beach town when they're off living their own lives. What I do know is that I'm finally in a place where I can look forward instead of back. The storm has passed, and while the damage is still visible in places, the sun is shining again. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm going to be okay.